Hey, Professor K here. So last week we left off with really blocking out the details in our CSS, kind of making those wide sweeping CSS rules that will allow us to get kind of the rough styles out without worrying too much about details. This week is all about the details. Today we're going to go through a bunch of different little things, including how to get the right colors on your page, how to get the right typography, and some beginning placement work to make sure that if you have to do rotation or overlap things, you know how to do that. But to start with this week, I thought it'd be helpful to go over some real basics of CSS. So let's take a look at what we've got here. So today we're going to talk about color values. What is allowed inside a color declaration in CSS? So on popcode here, I have two divs, color1 and color2, along with an h1 of color values. And I'm going to use this to demonstrate the different types of values that you can use in CSS for color and why you might want to use different ones at different times. To start with, you can see that my CSS is styled so that there's a background of black on both my divs here, and I'm using the element selector for that, as well as a height and width of 50 pixels. Just to show this a little more clearly, I'm going to go ahead and put a margin on here. And I really like to alphabetize my properties, so that's why I've got them in this order here. It's just a little easier to read. So now you can see there are two separate divs. That's a little easier to see. The other thing that I want to throw in here just to make it a little easier to see is a float. And we're going to talk a little bit more about floats and positioning this week. But for now, let's just take a look at what this does. Float, and then I'm going to go left. I want everything to float to the left. So using the keyword left, now these two sit next to each other. Again, going to talk more about that later in this set of videos, but let's just focus on colors for now. So now I need to write two selectors, a color1 class selector and a color2 class selector. I'm just going to do this right now, color-1, and I'm going to leave this blank. I don't need to put any styles on here, and then color-2. Open curly brace and close curly brace, as always, to make sure that we've got everything right where we can see it. So now that we've got our CSS set up, I'm just going to kind of focus this a little bit more clearly on here. So in Adobe XD, there are a couple different ways that you can get to the color. I like to just click on my color here and then hop over to fill, just double click this, or actually you can just click it once. The first type of color that you can use in CSS for your values is called a hex value. And you can see that right next to here. This is the one that I use by default. If I don't know what color I want to choose, if I don't really care about things like transparency, hex is the way to go. So let's say that we want color1 to be our red here and color2 to be our blue. We're going to go ahead and under color1, remember that we want to change what is here, the background. We're going to change that property. And we remember from our past lessons that because of the cascade in CSS, when you override the same property further down on the page, it's going to change it. So that's why even though both these divs have a background of black, color1 gets the background of red. Color2, because we haven't specified anything yet, still gets the background of black. So let's change that. Let's go ahead and grab this teal color and just pop it onto color2 using the same property, background. And I like to put a space in between my colon and my property value. It's just easier to see. All right, so there we go. Super easy. First value type you can use in color is called a hex color. Now, in order to demonstrate the next type of color you can use, I want these two squares to overlap a little bit. So there's a couple different ways we can do that. One of my favorite ways to use with float is a negative margin. Remember that margin is around the outside. If we go ahead and inspect this, and I'm just going to pull my inspector up over here, and we take a look at our layout, the margin is around the outside of the box. And when you hover over the box model, you can do this in Chrome too, I just prefer to use Firefox, you can see that it highlights it in yellow for you, so you can see what's going on. And if I do the same with color1, that's where you can see the yellow is where the margin is. And these dots are where the width and height of the box are. So one trick you can use with floats is called a negative margin. So let's just try this. We can even just try it in our inspector. Let's try negative 10 pixels. See how that scooted this over? You can even do it one farther. I actually want these to overlap. So negative 20 pixels, and then I'm going to do 20 pixels up here so that we have a little slice of overlap in here. So now that I've tested that, I am just going to go and on color 2, put a margin dash left of a negative value. Again, 20 pixels to make sure there's some overlap, twice the normal margin. And then a margin dash top of 20 pixels. There we go. And now we have some overlap. So here you can see with hex values, there's no transparency. What if I wanted a little bit of transparency with these, like with a Venn diagram? That's where the other common type of color value that we might use in here, RGB or RGBA, might come in handy. So let's go back into Adobe XD, pop into our teal here, and click this fill. Just see what our options are underneath this type. We have hex, RGB, and HSB. RGB stands for R, red, green, G, and B, blue. Whereas HSB is a little more complicated. That's hue, saturation, and brightness. HSB is a little more intuitive to deal with, but I find RGB is handy because it matches a little closer to what you'll use in Firefox. So let's grab the RGB value. So it's 25, 195, and 195. And here, if we were to turn down the transparency to 65%, you can see that gets a little bit more transparent over here. And then when we go to put this into our code, we're going to use all 4 of these values, R, G, B, and this last one is going to be an A, alpha. So 25, 195, and 195 is what I want to remember here. So here we're going to do RGB. And again, I'm just going to start with my 3 values so I don't forget them. 25, 195, and 195. And as you can see, that produces the exact same color as we had before. And now if I want to mess with the transparency, all I have to do is add an A here, RGB, A for alpha, and then 0.5 or whatever value from 0 to 1 you want. Let's say it's 0.75 for something more transparent or 0.95 for something very transparent. And then you can see that you can just adjust the transparency in real time. It's really handy. So that's when you might want to use RGBA. Just to demonstrate what HSL or HSB might look like, the reason why I don't use HSB is it doesn't pair as nicely with the actual browser values. So here it says HSB, hue, saturation, and brightness. In CSS land, this is instead hue, saturation, and lightness. So it can really confuse you. But let's go ahead and see what this looks like anyway. So I need to remember this is HSL, and then my numbers are 180, 87, and 76. So HSL, I have to remember 180, and I already forgot my values, 87 and 76. 87, 76. And you can see that that didn't do anything. So why didn't that do anything? That should have changed this to a fully transparent. See, HSB, it won't let you do that in Popcode anyway. So HSL isn't even being recognized here. And that's, like I said, one of the reasons why you might not want to use that set of values is they don't work everywhere. So really the 2 main color types you want to go with are your hex value. That's always going to start with this pound sign, or RGB and RGBA. Again, the only real reason to deal with RGBA and deal with all these like kind of complicated numbers that are hard to copy paste are if you need transparency. So that's an overview of colors in CSS, and I hope that helps you decide how to pick colors and code them in your mockups. So I'll see you in just a moment with some more information on how to go through and style some more complicated selectors on your rough styles. See you in a moment.